Alright YouTube, so we are back of course with some Final Fantasy VII Remake content. It has been a while. We're going to look at some translations from Itakamochi over on Twitter for the FF7 Remake Ultimania. And when I say we're going to look at some of them, I do mean some, because we haven't looked at her translations in a good week or more at this point. And as you guys might remember, the Ultimania is fucking massive, dude. It's like 752 pages, and I don't know how much of that is actually game content versus interviews and extra stuff. Also, I apologize if you can hear the rain in the background. There's a window to my right that has an air conditioning unit in it, and it makes it kind of a little bit louder than it normally would be. And it's been a hot goddamn day here in Oklahoma, and all of a sudden, like, as I start recording this video, it just starts raining out of nowhere. I don't know. Anyways, back to Itakamochi and her translations. When it comes to her, like, translating some of these interviews, according to her, some of these are pretty damn long. Like, it's taken her multiple days to translate just like a single interview, so it's going to take a while to catch back up on all this. I have like a week or more of having to read through her Twitter, and some of these are really lengthy translations. So I wanted to hit a couple bits of smaller news for today's video, but to kick things off, we'll do some non-translation related news. So first up, there's going to be an orchestral arrangement album coming out later this year in October. It says, Final Fantasy VII Remake will be getting an orchestral arrangement album that will feature select songs that will be played live during the FF7R Orchestra World Tour next year. The CD will be out in October, and here's the track list. We have Prelude Reunion, Opening Medley, Flowers Blooming in the Church, Tightrope, Tifa's Theme, Seventh Heaven, Let the Battles Begin, Battle Medley, Shinra's Theme, The Arsenal, Arbiter of Fate Singularity, FF7 Main Theme, One Winged Angel Rebirth. You can also already pre-order this. There's not a cover for it just yet, and it looks like it'll be about $36 US. Obviously, that's going to vary state by state. And also, it's going to vary depending on what country you live in as well. And I've said it before, I'm not really a collector type of person when it comes to video game memorabilia. I own some stuff here and there, but I don't really buy stuff like this. Like, this seems a little too much for me. $36 for a handful of orchestral versions of songs. It's like twice as much as a normal CD, but maybe it's like a limited edition type of thing. Maybe they'll only sell it for so long, so I guess that could justify the price a bit. But also, I'm not the type of person that listens to like video game music in my free time. I know a lot of people that do that. A lot of people listen to like video game songs when they're like working out and shit. That's just not me. I listen to regular music in my free time. But to each their own. Also, coming off the back of that, another music-related bit of news is apparently Square Enix is coming out with a lo-fi remix album of songs from Final Fantasy, and oddly enough, the Saga series, which I haven't heard about in a long time. I have no idea if the Saga franchise is still even going to this day, and I never got to play it, but I remember there was that ad in the back of the Final Fantasy VII booklet. There's an ad for Saga Frontier, and there's an ad for like Final Fantasy Tactics. Or was the other ad Bushido Blade, or did it have all three? I don't remember. It's been a long time since I looked in the FF7 booklet, but for sure, Saga Frontier, that windmill image right there you see in this picture, is just burned into my soul. But a lo-fi remix album of Final Fantasy songs? Can you imagine like a lo-fi remix of like Sephiroth's theme song or something? Like, what the hell is that even going to be like? Lo-fi is a pretty interesting genre of music. It's not something I listen to super often, but like my outro currently right now on the channel is a lo-fi remix of a song by Childish Gambino, 3005. So I'll be very curious to hear what this music sounds like. So first up, we have Hamaguchi commenting on the short load times for the game, and it says, FF7 Remake is highly praised as a game with amazing quality with the latest technology, but was there anything that was challenging or something that you did not personally oversee but was still impressed with the outcome? His reply is, seeing the world of FF7 open up through its story is one of the highlights that makes the game so enjoyable, but the user experience and story immersion could be greatly impacted with too many load screens and wait times. We therefore kept a technical eye on the loading system since the beginning. In order to do this, we aligned the data with each situation so that it could simultaneously load, which allowed us to not have the loading screen appear during the middle of the chapter. During the last cutscene of each chapter, the next chapter's data would already be loading in the background, which allowed for the load screen between chapters to also be as short as possible. We also added tips to read on the load screen, but because the loading times are so short, it's also difficult to read them all. It made me cry out with joy. So I can absolutely agree that the load times for Remake are pretty damn short, and I guess they have them like kind of loading in the background a lot of the time, so you don't really have to do that. And it is a relatively seamless world. Like, you just walk out of like Sector 5 slums and go into the next area. There's not a whole lot of load times within the game. But on the flip side of stuff, it is honestly a very linear game. We talked about this quite a bit, and also don't really know, to this day, now that the game's been out for a few months, I still don't know what exactly justified this game being like damn near 100 gigabytes. Just for comparison's sake, Ghost of Tsushima just recently came out, and it's like a 35 gigabyte game, but I think there's like a day one patch, so it might be around like the 40 gigabyte mark. And that game offers vastly more content, has a much bigger world to explore, and it has just as good of like graphics and cinematics, if not better than the remake, but it's like less than half the size. And the point of that comparison is that it's easy to have like quicker load times when you don't really have that big of a game to load. And I don't even know what the load times are for Ghost of Tsushima. I haven't hopped into that just yet. And I'm still just kind of curious why this game was 100 gigabytes. Like, I just downloaded Final Fantasy XIV which is an MMO, mind you, a massive multiplayer online game, and I don't think it was even 100 gigabytes. And my last thought on this before we move on, we're kind of going on a tangent here, but I think during the demo, whenever the demo got leaked or whatever, and people were data mining it, there was assets for things outside of Midgar, like other locations, like Costa del Sol or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but maybe there's assets in Remake Part 1 for Remake Part 2. Maybe that's why it constitutes such a big download size, and maybe Part 2 will come out a little quicker than we think. And right here we have a massive translation from Hamaguchi talking about the boss fights in the game, and this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I say it's going to take a while to go through all these translations. Like, look how big this is. Anyways, they say boss battles within the game have different stages where the attacks or field changes, such as the sword dance battle that splits between two parties during the fight. Was this concept of having battles be set up in different stages as the fight progressed something that was decided during the beginning of production? Hamaguchi replies with, "That's right. I told the team during the beginning that boss battles would be executed out in phases. Many of the bosses within each chapter contain some of the most exciting reveals, so we wanted players to be able to feel immersed within the story even through the boss battles. In order to do that, we constructed each boss battle to have several different phases where the battle strategy changes and also focuses on the story at the same time." I was actually going to read the rest of that, but it's just kind of talking about the Sephiroth fight at the end and how the party changes depending on what you do and all that stuff. It's stuff that we already kind of know. And it's super long-winded. But yeah, when it came to Remake, the boss fights were one of the things I was looking forward to the most. I actually had a whole video dedicated to like the boss fight hype or whatever the case. And they didn't disappoint. Like, all the boss fights within Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1 felt unique. Every single fight was different. I mean, at the core of it, you're still doing the same thing. You're just hacking and slashing and using magic. But the fights were very unique in the way the bosses acted. And I think fighting the bosses in phases and stages where they act differently and do different shit was a good choice, and I hope they continue with that like formula going forward with the sequels. I'm very curious to see how they're going to modernize and reinterpret some of the later boss fights. And the last translation we'll look at today, because this video is already getting a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, is from Hamaguchi giving us confirmation that it's going to be the same team working on Remake Part 2. And it says, "As a gamer, was there anything in particular from FF7R that surprised or impressed you?" And he says, "Although I myself was involved too, I'm still very impressed that we were able to successfully create a game from start to finish without making compromises to any of the large amount of data we had. This is all thanks to not only Nomura, Toriyama, and other directors such as me, but also to the game designers, graphics team, sound team, system staff, and more. All of us had various responsibilities as creators, and it's because of the best efforts of everyone that we were able to make this game possible. I'm personally very excited to make the next game with the same team members again." So not really surprising information, but it is good news if you liked Remake Part 1. It's going to be the exact same team working on Part 2 as well. If you didn't like Remake Part 1, maybe this is bad news. But I'm personally glad that they're not switching stuff up. Sometimes the studios do that, but they're using the exact same people from Part 1 for Part 2. Now, they might add more people just to help with development, especially because of the COVID stuff. You know, they might try to like play catch up with a lot more people. But at the core, it's still going to be the exact same people, so the transition from Part 1 to Part 2 should be pretty good. And outside of them maybe wanting to add like some new game mechanics and stuff that didn't exist in Part 1, the game should feel relatively the same from a narrative and gameplay perspective. But anyways, my dudes, that is pretty much the video. Like I said before, it's getting a little bit long. We don't usually do videos this long unless what we're talking about absolutely requires it, so I kind of want to wrap it up. So, of course, what are your thoughts on what we talked about today? Did you like the boss fights in Remake Part 1? Are you going to buy these couple of albums that are coming out sometime soon? As always, leave your thoughts on more in the comment section below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. We'll stay updated with more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on my notifications. Follow me on Twitter at @DashingDavid, at my Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.